We're going to hear about a pivotal project for Western Sydney, and I'll invite to the stage Tim Poole, who's the Program Director for Parramatta Light Rail for Transport for New South Wales. Tim has over 20 years' experience with the leadership and management of major infrastructure projects in Australia and overseas. He led Stage 1 of the Gold Coast Light Rail on behalf of 3 levels of government for the planning, business case and procurement phases, closing Australia's first public transport PPP in 2011. Since March 2016, he's been Project Director for the Parramatta Light Rail project and was recently appointed by the New South Wales Government as Program Director, responsible for a single comprehensive program for the urban transformation and transport projects within the Greater Parramatta to Olympic Peninsula Priority Growth Area. Please welcome Tim Poole.
So good morning, everyone. And yeah, as you've just heard, my job is to keep you entertained until the minister gets here. I hope you all enjoyed morning tea. Feel free to move your hands around. It's pretty cold in here, and I'm glad I'm wearing a suit. So for the next 15 minutes or so, and I do want to probably be a little bit isolationist here and not just talk about Western Sydney, but also talk about actually what is now known as Central Sydney. And so my narrative today will really be about how the Parramatta Light Rail is working in a collaborative manner with many other people in Greater Parramatta to deliver, I guess, what is the cornerstone of the future of Central Sydney, as it's now known. And I'd just like to acknowledge all my friends and colleagues from other government departments. We've had a really productive 12 months of working together. And also with the City of Parramatta, Greg Dyer's here as well, just to acknowledge the relationship that we've developed with all our key stakeholders, and I think that is a foundation for success that will which will unfold next year. So. And I'm expecting I'll get a text when the minister's close, so then you'll see me starting to speed up and that sort of thing. But at this stage, I'm probably going to be fairly. I'm going to probably pace myself fairly well. So the first thing, as my talk shows, it's really when I talk about value. I'm not going to talk in particular about value sharing. I think the minister's going to talk specifics about government policy around value sharing. But what I wanted to do was to talk about how Parramatta Light Rail in particular, as part of an integrated transport and land use response, will create value to Sydney's central city. And as you probably know, those of you who were part of the recent release of the Greater Sydney Commission's district plans, we've now got a West Central district, and it encompasses the local government areas of BOOMTOWN, Parramatta, Cumberland and the Hills. And I'd also like to add my weight to Chris Brown's shot at the Victorian Treasurer this morning, is that this is actually the area which will be the fastest growing region in Australia in the next 20 years. So Greater Sydney Commission are predicting a growth rate of over 2.5% for West Central region. So for that to be successful, I guess it's fair to say that, you know, we need to have great places and environment to grow jobs, and so the West Central area really needs to be smart, it needs to be livable, it needs to be productive, and it needs to be well connected. So at the heart of a West Central district is what is known now as the Greater Parramatta and Olympic Peninsula, or GPOP, as it's been coined, and that consists of 4 precincts. And you know you're on a good thing when there's at least one super precinct. And in this case, we've got not one but 2 super precincts in GPOP. We've got the Parramatta CBD Westmead Health and Education Super Precinct in the west. We have the Camellia Carlingford Next Generation Precinct, the Olympic Park Lifestyle Super Precinct, and the Essential Urban Services Advanced Technology and Knowledge Sector area in the middle. Now, all these will be connected by Parramatta Light Rail, and I think the important thing to note is that the growth projections for this area really start happening now. In fact, it is happening now, and it will continue for the next 10 years and beyond. So obviously what has been recognised in the Central District Plan is how important Parramatta Light Rail is to supporting immediate growth. And I guess it's really exciting to hear the government's announcements on Metro West, and obviously that together with improved rail services, the M4 upgrades means that there's a great opportunity for more people to come to this area of Sydney and work, but more importantly, it's a great opportunity for people to live close to work. And as you can see, Parramatta Light Rail in what we call the purple haze, and it still remains a purple haze at this stage, is connecting directly 3 of those 4 precincts. And the targets that Greater Sydney Commission have set are really interesting in terms of, for the next 5 years, 22,000 new houses in Greater Parramatta alone, and between 100,000 and 120,000 jobs in GPOP in the next 15 years. So that gives you a context around the level of growth and how important it is that it's properly supported by integrated transport and land use. The other thing that Greater Sydney Commission have introduced in terms of a narrative, which I think is quite interesting, is this notion of a 30-minute city. And that is that, you've got everything within 30 minutes. And that's not just jobs, that's entertainment, that's schooling, that's community infrastructure, it's retail, and it's entertainment. And I guess at the moment, Parramatta is sort of defined around the 2 major arterials that connect Parramatta to the CBD, and that's obviously the Western Rail Line and the M4. Yes, it's pretty easy at the moment to get to Parramatta. In fact, it's quite well connected. It's got a good bus interchange. It's got a good rail interchange. But it's actually not that easy to get around Parramatta. And you wouldn't know that Westmead, for example, is 10 to 15 minute walk. And you wouldn't even know that Parramatta Park, one of Australia's great urban open spaces, is only 5 minutes away. And more importantly, it's not easy to get to Camellia. There's no direct connections to Camellia. And then Camellia and the Sydney Olympic Peninsula are both, as it's termed, peninsulas. And you can't actually get there directly by any mode of transport. So with light rail and the reorganisation of bus services and as I said, improvements to Western Rail line services in the future, then the notion of the 30-minute city starts to change, and it goes from something that's centred around a corridor to a much broader area, and that area you see there is what's known as GPOP. And the important thing around GPOP is that when we talk about a central city, we don't just talk about the CBD core of the commercial core of Parramatta, which is really important, but the city, Sydney's second city, or central Sydney as it's known, is in fact that area you see in blue. And with the prospect of a West Metro in the future, and better connectivity, better road services, and improved transport network, it means we're in pretty good shape to be able to plan land use confidently around future infrastructure. But I think what we're seeing already through very, very detailed working relationships with our partners is that we have to do this in a collaborative fashion. You've heard that very strongly this morning about how important collaboration is, but also in terms of the value of strategic investment and ensuring that investments are linked to benefits that are realised. So this notion that value sharing is really about making sure that those who benefit have the opportunity to not only contribute to the solutions but to share in the value. And that's a conversation we've been having not only with our government partners but with the private sector for the last 12 months. So I'd just like to really take you on a little bit of a journey around GPOP and just touch upon some of the outcomes that we're trying to develop in partnership with government. And the first one is obviously the Parramatta CBD and Westmead Health and Education Super Precinct. This is the opportunity really to make Parramatta and Westmead an economic hub around high value medical research and high value industry, and it to the extent that it's probably one of the most exciting opportunities that economically that Australia's ever experienced. So Westmead Health, I've been very fortunate to work with a pretty forward-thinking leadership within this precinct. Danny O'Connor and his team and David Ballantyne and Health Infrastructure, absolutely committed to changing the way that health services are delivered, and also the way that people will be connected between the health precinct and the rest of the community. And what we're trying to do with Light Rail is actually ensure that Westmead itself, the opportunities and the potential for Westmead go well beyond the boundaries of the hospital. And what Parramatta Light Rail can do here is actually help grow the Westmead Health Precinct, grow it beyond the boundaries, particularly picking up the relationship with nearby universities and emerging research and innovation hubs. Also connecting Westmead better with surrounding residential areas, and most importantly with the Parramatta CBD. So in the future we have, I guess, Westmead and the Parramatta CBD being one great high value jobs creator. The light rail will actually create the vibrant front door that Westmead needs, and as I said, connecting it not only to residential areas in the CBD, but also to redefine the active transport offering for that area. At the moment, I think Westmead's about the 150th most walkable suburb in Sydney. I think the plans are to make it in the top 10 in the future, and we'd like to play a part of that. And also the very important relationship between Westmead and Parramatta Park. When we talk health and we talk lifestyle, then we've got this amazing opportunity with the Southern Hemisphere's largest health precinct for it to have a very strong relationship with Parramatta Park. We're also working really well with Urban Growth and Tasha Burrell and her team. And this is probably one of the most unique residential areas, or could be one of the most unique residential areas in Australia. It's the site of some of our earliest, not only European heritage, but also it's very significant from an Indigenous point of view. And so recognising that through a high-quality residential and mixed-use development, which the Parramatta Light Rail's part in this is that the primary connection to this area and to Westmead and the CBD could be by light rail and active travel. So we go beyond a car dependence growth story to something that's a lot more contemporary, a lot more 21st century, and based on our research, much more appealing to the millennials. The millennials are saying to us is that they don't need cars they want to be close to jobs, and they want to be close to high value jobs. And so I guess Urban Growth and Parramatta North and Westmead and the CBD, it's a really nice hand to play in terms of the city building narrative for Greater Parramatta. So the CBD, certainly at the moment, those of you who have spent a lot of time in Parramatta in the last 12 months would have seen an amazing transformation. And obviously the City of Parramatta are central to this. we're talking to at least 4 developers at the moment on how light rail can interface with their development. So, as I said, this is happening now, and we really don't have a moment to lose. The CBD is such an important commercial core for GPOB, but it really must be supported by proper accessibility solution. And even though it is well serviced at the moment by bus and rail, as I said earlier, permeability and wayfinding does struggle at times, and the connection between the stations and the river and enhancing the river needs to be strengthened. So what we'll be doing with Parramatta Light Rail is actually providing that transport option to ensure that all the areas are stitched together, and in particular interfacing with not only the private sector developments but also the massive amount of government investment in CBD, including Parramatta Square, which is a partnership, I think, with Western Sydney University and City of Parramatta. And the redevelopment of the stadium, Western Sydney Stadium, the relocation of the Museum of Applied Arts and Sciences, and the new City Schools precinct. Now, we're obviously working with all those government departments to ensure that the accessibility solutions to those areas are underpinned by light rail. So next generation living, what do we mean by that? Well, I think probably there's an increasing government focus, particularly from the Greater Sydney Commission, around affordable housing, and this area we think is really well set up for not only affordable housing, but people to think about next generation living and what that means in terms of maybe smaller houses but bigger lifestyles. So you spend less time at home and more time enjoying the environment and the surrounds. As you probably be aware, that this corridor at the moment is served by a rail service which on average is once every half an hour, and the PLR proposition is to replace that with 10-minute services each direction, connecting both to Strathfield and to Parramatta, with potential for an extension in the future to Epping. So we've got this opportunity to directly connect the Camellia precinct, which is currently being master planned by the Department of Planning and Environment. There's over 45 hectares of development opportunities in Camellia, and I think over 10,000 houses being planned. There's also the Rosehill Racecourse, and we can't underestimate its value as a future entertainment precinct, considering the Australian Turf Club's plans for redevelopment. Camellia, the Rydalmere in its own right is already a very strong education and research hub. There's over 40,000 students at Western Sydney University, and our job is to ensure that the 3 Western Sydney University campuses of Greater Parramatta, at Westmead, at CBD and at Rydalmere are directly connected by light rail. Across the road, government property are planning a major development as well, which will enhance the livability and the attractiveness of that area. Once again, an opportunity for people to work very close to work. And then there's these emerging residential areas, as I said, new generation living in Dundas. The Planned Land and Housing Commission Tilapia redevelopment, 40 hectares of opportunities, very strong, makeover of social and affordable housing. That's a very exciting opportunity that will be directly served by light rail. And finally, Carlingford, those of you that go up that way, there's certainly a lot happening at Carlingford at the moment, a lot of private investment in that area in anticipation of light rail. So this central area, I probably won't dwell on this central area too much, but just suffice to say that light rail does have a role to play in terms of supporting the I guess the upscaling of industrial and high value research, industrial research in this area. Certainly the area of Camellia has some very established long-term businesses, and their access to the M4 will ensure that actually this area needs to be maintained as industrial area. So I guess our role in terms of transport options is to ensure that there is some realistic public transport choices given to this essential services area of GPOP. So it brings me on to the second super precinct, as they call it, and most of you would be aware that Sydney Olympic Park has recently released its master plan, and it in itself there's some exciting numbers there. At the moment, we've got a bit of a problem with Sydney Olympic Park because it was really designed to make it very difficult to get in and out of there because it was a special events precinct, and it's remained that way. So what we're working with several government agencies, including RMS and Transport now, and with Sydney Olympic Park Authority, is actually to come up with a really good long-term access solution that can support the growth. Obviously, Metro West will have a part to play in that, but once again, we do need to look at what needs to happen in the next 10 years to ensure that we get it right and we're not building infrastructure at the last minute. There's some of the numbers, and probably worth just dwelling on the fact that GPOP is actually quite fortunate. We've got a light rail coming and a metro announced, and that's only just happening in the eastern city. We're very fortunate to have that level of government vision, looking at this actually supporting growth rather than necessarily responding to it. So we've got this really great opportunity to get it right. And just finally on Strathfield, I'd just like to say that Strathfield has been a little bit forgotten in terms of its role here, but it's a very important transport hub. As you would be aware that both the northern and western lines connect at Strathfield. And Strathfield itself, the town centre, probably deserves a really good makeover. And I think the opportunity here in the future is around the light rail interchange with heavy rail, and the opportunity there may be to have an integrated development that can really kickstart the Strathfield town centre, and we don't want to lose sight of that. So that's, I think, what I'd just like to finish off by just mentioning a few things. Firstly, just in terms of value sharing, what we're effectively doing in terms of value sharing framework for Parramatta Light Rail is actually looking at the various suites of opportunities that we want to discuss with other government partners and the private sector. You'll hear more about what the SIC really means for the Greater Parramatta Olympic Peninsula next year. But we're also looking at how we can get uplift in government land, and there's quite a lot of government land in this area, as you could appreciate. We're also looking at how strategic property areas relate to the acquisition of land associated with Parramatta Light Rail. Can we strategically look at areas that can actually deliver value back to the project and to the community? We're very, very, very keen on partnerships with other stakeholders to ensure that we deliver the infrastructure together and we can share in the value. And finally, it's also about sharing value in terms of the way that we procure and deliver projects. That includes private finance, but it might also include third parties delivering infrastructure on behalf of government. There is a precedent for that, and I believe it's been fairly successful. So in just finishing, next year is going to be a really big year for the Parramatta Light Rail project. I'm currently moving my team from the city to new offices in Parramatta, so we'll be joining Greater Sydney Commission, Department of Planning and Environment, RMS, Education and Health, amongst others, in making Parramatta the home. And we're doing this on the basis that we're planning to be consulting with the community early in 2017 regarding the final route for PLR. And that will precede an investment decision and the commencement of the environmental impact study towards the middle of next year, leading to commencement of procurement in late 2017. So that's the plan. All I'd just like to say is this is a journey that we're only just starting to go on, and we're looking forward to continuing to partner with all of you and continue to have conversations with all of you on how we can make this component of the Greater Parramatta to Olympic Peninsula hum, and how we can support the obvious growth and jobs opportunities in this fantastic area. Thank you.